We asked ChatGPT the top marketing questions companies have, and we are taking them on one by one. Hear what these industry leaders say so you'll be in the know. Today we are joined by Stephen Dahlem, the Senior Creative Director at Corporate Magic, an agency that creates and produces events for Fortune 1000 companies. He's here to answer the question, how have events changed post-pandemic, and what are the emerging trends? Stephen, I couldn't be more excited to talk to you today.
It's so good to see you.
As we were former colleagues for quite a while, and I hope we both learned so much from each other. And I want to start with how the pandemic fundamentally changed the landscape and how things are different now post-pandemic with events.
Yeah, I think I think that's interesting how you said that, because I think it's different. It's kind of been a roller coaster from what we learned in the pandemic and how to create the virtual experience, moving into, there was a period immediately after that was a hybrid, trend that was happening that we were working through a lot. And we now are starting to see that our clients really understand the power of being together. People need people. They want to gather with people. And although we're still using some of the techniques that we've learned, it's not as much as a hybrid experience.
Yeah, it is. To me, it's always amazing. You can, even in business, right? How many conference calls do we have or Zoom calls do we have? And then you finally meet the person and it's a totally different experience. It always is interesting. You just get a better sense of them when you're with them and when you're in their presence. I don't know. I think, since the beginning of time, we can't overcome that. As we develop the metaverse and all these other things, there's just nothing like being in the room, hearing your leader speak to you, being inspired, right?
And they are inspired. I think those leaders that are on stage feel that energy, so they know instantly if they're connecting or not. And when we were creating these really great, network broadcast quality productions, that's why I think for Corporate Magic, at least, it was very easy to transition into the virtual space. It's because we had all of this broadcast background. But the presenters who are delivering those messages are delivering it to a camera and hoping that it connects, right? And when they're on stage with the live audience, they can feel it and hear it, and they can run into the people they're talking to presenting to, I should say, in the hallway, and maybe somebody did understand it or they're inspired by something else, and they can immediately change and update their message for the next morning or that kind of stuff. So the real-time connection in those live experiences, you really don't get in a virtual space.
Right, and it actually makes it more effective, right? It changes, sort of the way you inspire people by getting the feedback, and that's just so critical and so important. What are some of the ways that Corporate Magic, and I should say Corporate Magic is an event production company. It works globally. It's an amazing group of people, talented. Stephen is a creative director there and really dreams up a lot of the amazing content that is presented on stage and to the companies to inspire internally and externally their audiences. What are some of the things that maybe you are doing differently than you did before 2020? Before 2020, excuse me, 2020.
I think one of the big things is the after content, is because of all the different social platforms that everybody has as attendees. We can now take, we spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on content, months and months and months of creating these experiences for these audiences that happen once and then they're gone. They get shoved up onto hard drives and put on the server and archived in the back and never to be seen again except for reference. And now one of the things that is exciting that we're doing and offering is taking that content that we spent so much time creating and getting our hands into in it and cutting it up and repurposing it and to get it out on the social platforms, and with the laser pinpoint, target audience that you can get to down to everybody that was there, you can now give those messages, taking those keynote speeches and taking sound bites and putting them on Insta and that kind of stuff. So you keep the energy and excitement and the emotional connection of the message going long after the meeting has finished.
Wow, so it really becomes more effective in a sense, right? So it isn't just they leave the meeting, you inspire them, they go back to their desks, their offices, their clients, but you're continually trying to renew the inspiration, I guess, in a certain sense, right? Yeah.
Indeed. And that's the thing, is that in the past, after a meeting was over, what would happen is you would see this incline of excitement and power in the client's business, but it would tank off after a while. And now you can actually extend that a little bit longer, because you keep spoon feeding these moments of remember this, don't forget that. And it's a great way to get more bang for your buck too, out of all of that effort that you put together for that meeting.
Has it changed the way you deliver the message? I know that people are more accepting, of Zoom. People are more accepting of, a different way of delivery. So talk a little bit about when you're planning these massive events with many, many employees in attendance, and even if they're all in attendance, do you still do things differently on stage or, before they enter? Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. We have what's really exciting is we're just diving into the very beginnings of it, is AI going into creating custom content that happens in real time. So we can really, with the data that we're getting from the attendees and from the message that we want and the feedback that we're getting from smart devices and stuff like that. In the past, it was always more like surveys and that kind of thing. Now, and it would be like a bar chart, that was
Yes.
now it's full videos with voiceover that can be created so quickly on the spot in real time, based on that data those analytics that you're getting in from the audience. So that's really exciting, is the new stuff. I think the other part of it too is we've had clients that used to do like a back and forth where they would do a small audience, and it was purely budgetary. They would do a small audience for 1 year, and then they would bring the whole audience the next year. That was 6,000 people, then down to 1,000, then 6,000. And now what happens is they can still bring the entire group every year, but it's just every other year we're bringing that other group in to watch the show for virtually.
What was your thoughts about AI when you heard, that you were going to incorporate it and have to respond to it? Were you always positive about it? Because many people are scared of it, really worried about how it's going to affect them, and you seem it can be intimidating to receive that information where things aren't going over the way you thought they were, and having to sort of respond to things that you're like, really, is that really the feedback? Has that happened to you at all?
It's so new that it haven't really, but responding to what you said about being scared of it, I'm a techno geek. I love diving into that kind of thing. I can see how it could be a game changer and a big time disruptor to a lot of creatives,
Yes.
but I don't think it's going away.
Right.
So you really need to sort of figure out its best uses. I'm very excited. We have a show this week, at the end of the week, that I'm looking forward to going to. One of our keynote speakers is an AI expert from Google. So I'm really looking forward to seeing their take on it and what they see as the future of this in live events and in marketing.
Yeah, so I guess some things you'll be doing in the very, very near future is figuring out sort of maybe processes to in the middle of shows respond to this AI you're getting, right? You
That's
really are
exactly right.
gonna. I mean, it already is for people who don't know the events world. I mean, it is already a chaotic, whatever set of meetings, and the event company is, there's always things at the last minute, and so this is going to throw it sort of further into late nights, right, and changes, and so it sounds to me like processes will be updated and worked out.
Indeed. And
Yeah,
I don't run away from that. I love that. I think that that's part of the excitement of the industry
I agree.
is
Yeah.
these new fun crayons that you get to play with to create the magic.
Yeah, as someone who's always worked on a deadline, I appreciate it. No, I understand that. Yeah. Do you feel like we're shifting back to, well, do you feel like in the near future there could be a shift back to more hybrid events? You just said that everybody is, wanting to be in person, but we all know that there could be some trends and some shifts again. What do you sort of see on the landscape?
Well, I feel like that it's the hybrid aspect is always going to be there. And what I meant earlier was immediately following the full virtual shows. Like I said, that were it's the virtual shows were like broadcast television quality live productions with packages and stuff like that, and the hybrid shows that were popular in the past couple of years were from a health perspective. For a while there, you couldn't get enough people in the room because of restrictions. And then it was a budgetary thing. They were like, oh, well, we can, have more people see this. But when you're doing a hybrid show really is two experiences and one event. It's like going to, people have heard me say this before, but it's like if you're going to the Cowboys game here in Dallas, you can go to the stadium, you can have all that sensory experience of all those people and the big board and the games right in front of you and the food and the excitement, and that's one experience. You then watch that on, Fox Sports, and it is the exact
Yes.
same event. It's a completely different experience. So when you say that it's a hybrid, when you're crafting the hybrids, mega churches have been, fisheye kind of production forever. That's not really creating a virtual experience that's really impactful for these folks. So that's what we were doing for so long, was creating these two kind of things. And now the trend is back to real in person. How can you make those experiences immersive and more impactful emotionally, and that kind of thing? So I think that the hybrid will always be an option. Again, just another tool to use. But right now it really is back to
In person. When
in-person
when you're
meetings.
creating these new, post pandemic, and you're creating these new in person events for maybe a company that you did virtual for 2, 3 years, and now you're back, do you approach it any differently? Are there any tips and tricks that you realize need to happen because these people haven't had their event for a couple of years?
Honestly, it was a learning curve because we had been in the virtual bubble for so long that when we did go back to live, it was very like, how did we do this? Like, whoa, like how did the rehearsals go? Because when you're doing the virtual shows, oh my gosh, the pre-production on a virtual show is so labor intensive to get everything right. And then you have clients, because it's virtual and maybe some of the pieces are pre-taped, they want to take after take after take and edit after edit after edit, when before, when you do a live show, and now during live show, you have the offline room where you pump them up and rally and wordsmith and get it all going,
Right,
and
right.
then,
And then it's
ladies and
showtime.
gentlemen, here you are. You shove them on
Showtime.
stage, and it's
Yeah.
fly or die.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, is that I feel like that it was just the memory of how did we structure a rehearsal, because and getting a client. now, in getting the client to remember that no, there's no time for all of that pre-production that we used to have, the hand holding to be on TV. It was a different thing. So I think that getting them comfortable again with being live in front of an audience and not okay, let's take that again.
Yeah, how interesting. I didn't realize it. So post production was really, or pre production was just so much more cumbersome. Yeah, yeah.
Big time.
What are there any brands that have benefited from this transition? During the pandemic, that perhaps they picked up. That they got gathered a lot of steam in the virtual world, and now they're back into post pandemic, and they're going to start staging events. Can you think of anyone you can give an example of how they're going to have a rough transition, or maybe they're not going to have a transition?
Yeah. One of our big clients, Bridgestone, really did those virtual shows because, like I said, it was a very network broadcast quality, because we knew from watching Zoom calls that to keep an audience engaged, people were used to the network broadcast quality production and making sure that it felt like that. And then what was cool about it was it also had an interactive layer over the top of it. Um, they they kind of had I think it was a smooth transition. I think they were the ones that benefited the most because they were the ones that had the small meeting one year and a big meeting the next. And now being able to get their entire team, you know, to watch every year, and they have the benefit of in person, a small in person, large in person. So it's a better situation than before
Right, right.
when they couldn't do it. And we create those, we still do like I said, we still do those two things for them. So for instance, if you were the online audience that was, experiencing the event, we would, you have your own host, you have your own packages, you have your own kind of like backstage briefing room when the executive comes off stage, he's interviewed. It's like those kind of only on the virtual space experiences that keep you connected instead of just let's feed IMAG to, you know, out there to the world. So it keeps it. I think that is a positive because they were able to use. I think that's the biggest example is they were able to use it better than anybody else. They understood it,
Right,
and
right.
so instead of just kicking it to the curb, they understood. Hey, let's the value of continuing that layer of virtual.
And sort of jumping off of that, we talked a little bit about the changes, right, during the pandemic to now post pandemic. Can you think of what stayed the same? What didn't change? What had to happen at the show or was consistent? It didn't matter virtual, didn't matter in person.
It always goes back to the message. No matter if you're live or in person, you have to get back to the why of the meeting. How do you want the attendees, wherever they're coming in from, how do you want them to respond? How do you want them to feel once they leave the room, once they leave the event? Because that's the whole reason you have event is to celebrate and change behavior. And so you need to have that message dialed in before you turn the camera on, before you turn on the stage lights. You've got to have that, or it's just fluff production. You need, and production has got to, this more than anybody, is production has got to speak to the message or it just doesn't connect.
And actually, that's what I felt during the pandemic. I felt like the pressure was on to, really up the storytelling, to appeal to people to stay in the room, right? Yes, the
Mm-hmm.
emotion, but just keeping them engaged using
Yep.
storytelling. Sometimes we all know we've stood in the back of rooms when a leader is giving a talk and it's all numbers. without, any kind of basing in reality and adding anecdotes that will ground it. And you're just like, oh my gosh. But in a virtual setting, that's just like worse, right? Right? Yeah.
Right. It just becomes just noise
Yep.
because there's
Yeah.
it feels like another Zoom call and not an exchange of information and a connection. And you do that so well. That's why
Thanks.
you're so good at what you do. Is you are an excellent
Thanks.
storyteller.
So
You always bring it back to that. You always like,
you.
hey.
Thanks.
I remember the first time we ever worked together. It was one of the very first things that I learned was we were editing a video, and I kept looking at it like we had created. It was kind of a after the fact video, like putting highlights reel together, and I was wanting you to use this clip of the stage was transforming and moving, the executive was coming out on stage, and it was and you went, no, look at that person's face in the audience. That tells the story way more about this meeting than that crazy stuff. And I went, wow, okay. It was a big learning.
Well, I
moment.
don't remember it. I'm sorry. I was going to ask you, what are some of the things you're working on? Stephen, you always have amazing ideas that you are even more amazing at executing. So I just would love to hear some of what you can share, coming up, as I'm sure you have meetings plenty happening at the end of the year. What are some of the exciting things that you're starting to tackle?
I'm very, very excited about the National Medal of Honor Museum grand opening. I can't really say much about it, but it is going to be awesome. It's going to be so powerful, and so it's such an amazing project to be a part of. And talk about storytelling, being able to share those stories in a new, contemporary, fresh way. That's one of the biggest ones I'm excited about.
Finally, I always ask people, like, what brands or companies, what strategies, it can be commercials, are you seeing right now that are really inspiring you and you're just loving?
Well, I guess the first one that comes to brain right now is, man, Warner Brothers is knocking it out of the park with the Barbie branding.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, on every level. It's so much fun to watch. It's the Airbnb Barbie Dream House in Malibu, that experiential piece they did there, from the boxes, that you can stand in, the standees, they're at the actual movie, and then the AI selfies that you can do to put yourself in the brand.
Yes, in the box.
All of that stuff is so great. So that's really been fun. Have you seen the movie? I haven't.
Oh, no, I haven't, but I hope to go this weekend. I saw Oppenheimer, so I'm up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it was great. Loved it. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing and spending some time with us, and hope to see you down the road.
Indeed. Thank you so much.